Wow, how's everybody doing today? All right, we got that light going. I guess this must be how audits feel. Got that interrogation and everything going. Well, it's an honor to be here today. I've seen some of the members that I was familiar with when I served in the State House. I saw some of the Casey County delegation over here, and had an opportunity to meet with some of the Washington County. I haven't seen Boyle, but I'm sure there's some from Boyle here somewhere. But it's an exciting time. And those of you all who know me know that I always like to start with something funny. Now, I will tell you, those who are familiar with Clarence, I had to retire Clarence. But if you want to, I know there's some people that are excited that I had to retire Clarence, but I always like to start with something funny. So what I want to do is I want to take you back. I want to take you all the way back to the time of the Wild, Wild West. Now, during that time frame, there was this fella, and this fella, he needed to get his mom an operation. It was very necessary. So he was looking at the paper trying to raise some money, and so he saw where there was a job for a shotgun driver on a stagecoach. Well, he calls up and says, you know, I'd like to apply for that. So he goes in. Well, I don't guess he called. But anyway, he went ahead and applied for it. And they said, well, you know, it's kind of dangerous. He said, that's all right. My mom needs an operation. So they get to go, and he says, now listen, what happens is there's a bandit that pops up over the hill and attacks the stagecoach. So when it comes, you got to tell me how far he is, and then when it comes to the necessary point, you're probably going to have to shoot him. He said, I got to tell you how far he is. You know, I don't do directions very well. He said, well, just tell me about how big he looks. Okay, so they get to going, and you know, they get to going. I said, well, do you see anything? He said, no, I don't see anything. He said, do you see anything now? He said, well, yeah, I see something. Well, how big is he? Well, he looks to be about so big. So he keeps going. He says, well, do you see anything now? And he says, yeah, he's about this big. He says, oh, we better get going faster. Well, how big is he now? Well, he's so big. And then he keeps going. He says, well, how big is he now? Well, he's this big. And he says, well, where is he now? He says, well, he's behind us. He said, well, shoot him. He said, I can't shoot him. He said, you got to shoot him. He said, I can't shoot him. He said, well, why can't you shoot him? Well, I've known him since he was this big. All right. Sorry. That's, those of you know me know I always got to start with something. Now, I tell you that for a couple things. One, because it's always good, especially if you start talking about auditing. I noticed on the campaign trail, you start talking numbers, people's eyes start glazing over. So we want to kind of get you a little bit engaged. But the other thing is, kind of make a correlation to that. You know, we've used, many of us here who started, we remember government was this big, and it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, we're not going to go out and shoot government, hopefully, but you know, we're going to have to get used to a more constrained government. And you know, from the standpoint of the auditor's office, I think we would want to be as much of an assistance in that as we possibly can. I will tell you that I'm real pleased, you know, being elected auditor. I've had an opportunity to get to know the people in the auditor's office. We're very excited. They're a great bunch of people. They do a fantastic job. They work hard to turn over every stone to help you all have as much money as possible to utilize in things. And then I'll also tell you that I've got one of the greatest executive staffs, I believe, in state government. We have some of them here today. Ginger Wills is here today. I was very excited to. Someone told me I stole her from transportation, but as I said, we are in government. We do not steal, we appropriate. So I was very pleased to appropriate her from over at Commissioner Comer's office. And then Sarah Beth Gregory is over here. I had the opportunity to serve with, she was my general counsel, and had an opportunity to serve with her both in the House, and of course she went over to the Senate. Michael Goins, I appropriated him from the House Republican caucus, so we're very excited about that. And then also one of my executive assistants, Brian Darnell, is here. He's from over in the Danville area. So we've got a great team put together. We're looking forward to moving forward. And just as I said on the campaign trail, there's multiple things we're going to look at. One of the first things is we want to help you, as I said earlier, scrutinize your tax dollars as best as we can. I know many of you heard Governor Bevin's speech last week when he talked about how, you know, in the state budget we're going to cut 4.5% immediately, and then 9% in many agencies. Now, of course, there's some in that particular budget that they're not going to cut, so overall it really is more like a 2.5% cut, but for many of the agencies it will be those impacts. So anything we can do to assist in that will help everybody. You know, in addition, I indicated that we were going to put Kentucky first. I will tell you that although this particular office, the auditor's office, like many of them, are elected partisan on a partisan nature. And obviously, you know, from my standpoint, that probably did help. I was elected as a Republican. I think it's important as the auditor that we be the independent watchdog and not worry so much about parties, in that regard. So it's important for us to do that. I know it was kind of interesting when I was on the campaign trail. We were in one area, and they were at both the current auditor at that time and myself were there, and they asked us the question, do you think that the auditor's office should be elected? And of course, both of us said yes, it should be elected. But I went on to say, it would probably be better if the auditor's office, even though I benefited from it, it would probably be better that if it was nonpartisan. That way we kind of eliminate part of that, Republican, Democrat, Independent type thing. But it's important to me, and it's important to our office that we act as the independent watchdog. And so we kind of coined a phrase in our office since I've got there, hashtag follow the data. For us, it's not a matter of targeting anybody or giving anybody a pass. We just want to make sure that we follow the data and report it accordingly. Now, the third thing I also indicated on the trail was we wanted to bring as conservative a philosophy as we could to the auditor's office. For 13 years when I was in the State House, I brought that same type of philosophy, and I want to bring that to the auditor's office. And part of going along with that same scenario, we're going to be working directly. I told some of you all on the campaign trail, but we're going to be working directly with the Department of Local Government to try to work out kind of what I would call an ISO 9000 type package, but really kind of a best practices. And I know there's some things out there, but we've looked at some of them. They're pretty thick, and we understand that there's a lot that you have to do, but we want to work with the Department of Local Government, especially new people, but to make sure that people see some of the mistakes that have been made by others, and hopefully we can correct that. And also we want to also make sure that we help you reduce your bill as best as we can. And the best way to do that is if you are better prepared when we come in, then we have less hours on the ground, and then obviously your bill will be less. On the campaign trail, I talked to one sheriff. He said, they billed us $117,000 for our audit. And I was like, well, that's a lot. But as I understood, maybe there were some things we could have done to help them prepare better. And from a standpoint of the auditor's office, we have to be a little bit careful because we're the third party, we're the watchdog. So that's why we're working with the Department of Local Government to get that prepared, and then help the Department of Local Government get with you and get that training taken care of. Now, as we proceed with those particular type of goals, there's some audits that are going to be coming up this year that we're going to be looking at. The first audit, we're going to look at the auditing the Kentucky Law Enforcement Program Fund, or better known as CLEP. We're also, at that same time, we're going to be looking at the fund that also provides training and equipment to firefighters, known as the Kentucky Firefighters Program Fund. One of the reasons we're doing that, it receives a surface audit, or what I would call like a 30,000 view audit in the SWAC, the statewide single audit. But the problem is it's never been, in 40 years of existence, it's never been individually audited. And to be honest with you, I was really surprised. Right after the election, I was coming in, we were working with the transition team, and in the parking lot, Representative Denny Butler, he approached me and he said, Mike, I sent this letter to the former auditor. He wouldn't do anything about it. I talked to some of the leadership, and they won't do anything about it. Will you audit this? And I said, well, tell me a little bit about it. He said, well, it's started out as 1.5% on the insurance premium tax, and they bumped it up to 1.8%. Said it brings in about over $100 million a year. It's divided primarily for the law enforcement, but also I think it's 23% goes to the firefighters, and it's never been audited. I was like, man, well, that sounds like something we need to take a look at. So that's something we're going to be exploring. I was glad to work with Representative Butler. He's a former retired police officer, and so we want to just make sure that those funds are being used wisely so that we can make sure those funds get to where they need to go. Another item that we are looking at is in regards to working with the retirement systems. On the campaign trail, I talked about the need to audit every aspect of our retirement systems. Obviously, KRS has 5 different systems, 2 of them dealing with the counties. From a standpoint, the counties is a little bit better funded than the overall state. But many of you all have read that the assumed rate, of course I always jokingly tell people, for those, you have to be careful when you talk about assumed, but the assumed rate was 7.5%, and they've since lowered that to 6.75%. So the funding level actually went from a tremendous 19% to 17%. So it's important for us to go in and audit those, do a performance audit. Now, I will tell you, from a standpoint, Governor Bevan has made a commitment to audit all the pension funds, that one, the Kentucky teacher retirement, which I'll talk a little bit about, as well as the judicial and legislative retirement. He has committed dollars, and we're not going to duplicate those audits, but we're going to work with him. Anything that he needs, we're going to work with him and try to provide. But you know, serving as a legislator, I had the opportunity to see some of the changes in KRS. I know it was in pretty bad condition, still in pretty bad condition, but we made some changes. I believe it was in 2014 that basically moved new individuals in KRS from, well, not moved the ones that are in there currently, but any new employees started, they went in what's known as a cash hybrid balance, which basically, in that particular case, what happens is new employees, they put so much in, the state puts so much in, and then the state guarantees 4% return on investment. And the studies had shown that basically in that regards, if it was, you know, 15 years, it was probably better than the other retirement if you're going to withdraw sooner or if you work later. It wasn't obviously quite as good for the employees if they were to do the standard 27 years. So we've made some adjustments, but obviously some additional adjustments will probably have to be made after those performance audits are done. From KTRS, it's a little, the Kentucky teacher retirement system, a little different animal. That particular one, they do not pay Social Security, nor can they draw Social Security. Typically, can't draw Social Security. There are some exceptions. Nor can they typically draw the Social Security of a deceased spouse. So from a standpoint of making sure that fund is solid, you know, all of them, we have to make sure they're all solid. The promises are made should be promises that are kept. But it's important for us to look at that one because they're not engaged in Social Security. So if that fund's not there, there's going to be some strong problems for them. So that's something that, you know, obviously I was glad to see the commitment from Governor Bevin, just as the same as we were committed. But once again, we're not going to duplicate any of those items. And of course, you know, getting back a little bit to the KRS, many individuals, myself included, had called for Bill Thielen to, those of you who know Bill Thielen, he oversees that particular fund, and many of us had concerns when the performance rate of that was extremely low. The performance rate was extremely low, actually lower than KTRS, and you know, he ended up staying, they ended up doing a search to replace him, and not only did they not replace him, they hired him back and they gave him a 25% raise. For even though there was poor performance. And many of us, myself included, kind of felt like that was a slap in the face of our employees, who many have not had, you know, raises or very small raises over the last couple of years. So many of us called for his resignation, or in my particular case, either he resign or at a minimum not take that 25% raise. That just sent a really bad signal, you know, to the people. But as many of you know, that did not take place. So I was glad that many, including the governor, are looking at the transparency aspect of these particular retirement funds. Now, one of the items that we as the auditor's office are taking a look at that I think, you know, our county judge executives and our magistrates would have interest in is the statewide audit of the Commonwealth, the single statewide audit of Kentucky, which many of you know is SWAC. Now, one of the findings that we found, we're getting ready to release that here in the next couple of days, and one of the findings that we found, I'm sure many of you all would be interested in, it basically dealt with the lack of timely payment to fiscal courts in counties with more than 70,000 people. Now, based on multiple fee audits of our auditors conducted, we found that the quarterly payments from DLG's county fee system branch due to the fiscal courts were not being remitted in a timely fashion. And of course that causes, you know, concerns for you all if those are not remitted. In fact, 3 out of the 4 of the payments in Boone, Kenton, Jefferson, Madison, and Pike counties were not remitted timely. So our review found that the turnover of CFSB and delays in responding to those issues raised by the county have led to the current situation. And of course we've worked with CFSB. They have indicated that they were in agreement to that, and that's an issue that they are going to be working with. Once again, I look forward to a very productive year as auditor. It's an exciting time. I appreciate everybody, and if you have any concerns, please let us know. As I indicated on the campaign trail, the biggest concern I heard was perhaps sometimes inconsistency, as well in some cases, as I indicated, the cost of the bill. So we are trying to address those. It's like drinking out of a fire hydrant right now, getting our feet wet. But we are excited and we are ready and we're looking forward to serve. Thank you all and God bless.